This video took 260 hours to create. Watch the full story of Germany's WW defeat in one sitting. The 11th of November 1918, World War I ended, with Germany as the defeated nation in June 1919. In the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, Germany signed the Treaty of Versailles with Britain, France, and the USA. Forced Germany to lose more than 7 million people and 73,000 square kilometers of territory. This also included numerous overseas colonies and military zones. With the army limited to 100,000 men, Poland was restored, and the German Empire became the Weimar Republic. In addition, Germany had to accept 440 articles, including territorial cessions. Pay large reparations in gold to the victors, with a wide scope, an unclear total, was not listed until 2 years after the signing of the treaty, causing an uproar in Germany. The conference was led by Britain, France, and the USA. Did not return Germany's rights in Shandong to China. They were transferred to Japan, ignoring China's victory status. This decision sparked a large-scale patriotic movement such as the May 4th movement in China. China's representatives refused to sign the Treaty of Versailles. That September, a German veteran named Adolf Hitler unwaveringly joined the political movement, Workers' Party that only met in beer halls and attempted to promote his ideas. By 1921, after 2 years of precise calculations, Germany needed to pay the victorious countries $33 billion in gold. And barring any unforeseen circumstances, this situation would continue until 1988 to repay the debt. The Weimar Republic strained Germany's economy by printing money. The exploitation of Germany's wealth led to a rapid devaluation of the German mark. From the start of the year when $1 equaled 64 marks, in 1923, it took 42 trillion marks for $1 and 500,000 marks for a loaf of bread. Regarding this, the Weimar government was forced to print billions of paper money, causing Germany's economy to collapse within 2 years. During these 2 years, in the small taverns of Germany, a man named Adolf Hitler. With his talent and stance, he quickly rose to prominence. He became the leader and rebranded the party, renamed it the Nazi Party, and created its swastika emblem and charter. As Hitler spread his ideas by 1923, the Nazi Party membership grew to over 30,000. They permeated every aspect of Germany. They became a prominent political force. Later, in November 1923, Hitler tried to stage a coup in Munich, known as the Beer Hall Putsch. Already in 1921, Hitler organized the Stormtroopers, an armed force entirely loyal to him. Hitler sought to seize power through violence, but the result defied his expectations. The Weimar government despised Hitler's rebellion. They not only suppressed the Stormtroopers militarily, but also put Hitler on public trial. But Hitler gave another wild speech in court, which now seems filled with falsehoods. But at the time, it was very convincing. Even the judges were persuaded. Hitler, who was initially sentenced to death, received only a 5-year prison term. While imprisoned, Hitler dictated, published Mein Kampf, outlining racist ideology, anti-Semitism, and expansionist ideals became the core tenets of Nazi ideology. Due to this incident, his actions gained widespread approval, spreading his ideology far and wide. Under public pressure, Hitler served just 9 months in prison before being released. Upon being released, he renounced violence and pursued power through propaganda and elections. By 1924, Germany's reparations grew more complex. To boost its economic influence in Europe, the US launched the Dawes Plan, offering installment loans to Germany. The plan extended until 1929, dispersing roughly 20 billion gold marks. Thanks to US support, Germany entered a stable period, with industry recovering. This stability depended on foreign capital, with 75% of investment relied on US short-term loans, leading it to be labeled as a false prosperity. The prosperity was soon shattered. In 1929, global financial crisis hit capitalist nations. Countless businesses near collapse. US loans to Germany were also terminated. Following the loss of US backing, Germany's economy collapsed entirely. By 1932, Germany's unemployment rate soared to 31%, leaving over 6 million jobless. Many died from illness and hunger. Many had to beg on the streets. The leaders of the Weimar government were utterly powerless, not one of them able to act. None would sacrifice for Germany's economy. Economy and politics collapsed. All that lay before the Germans was a gateway to hell. It was then Hitler stepped through the door. He told these desperate people that since they had no other choice, then follow me. Nazi propaganda began flooding the nation. Hitler's political ideas spread to every corner of the German Empire. He promised that every German would have milk and bread. In the July 1932 Reichstag elections, desperate Germans voted overwhelmingly for Hitler to take power. The Nazi Party also received 37% of the vote. It surpassed other parties to dominate the Reichstag. Hitler himself. In January of the next year, he became Chancellor. After Hitler took power, he secretly planned the Reichstag fire, crushing the German Communist Party. By constructing highways and secretly rearming, cut Germany's unemployment from 6 million to 3 million in just 2 years. Wages rose sharply and welfare improved significantly. Yet the funds for highways and rearmament were borrowed. He issued large bonds domestically, centralizing German wealth under his control. He sought US loans abroad, sacrificing long-term economic health. He overextended national fiscal resources to prepare for future wars. In 1934, after President Hindenburg passed away, he purged German elites who threatened him. He became the Third Reich's leader. In the spring of 1935, the military was expanded to 300,000 soldiers. Despite facing immediate protests from Britain, France, and Italy, however, these protests were just words. These convinced Hitler that these Western nations were mere paper tigers. If the facts were laid bare, they would surely turn a blind eye. On the 7th of March, 1936, Hitler brazenly nullified the Locarno treaties. He sent 30,000 troops into the Rhineland, violating the Treaty of Versailles. Defensive fortifications were built along Germany's western border. Western nations like France and Britain, even slight resistance would have forced Hitler to back down, but they settled for empty protests without taking any tangible action. Regaining the Rhineland boosted Hitler's prestige, soared to new heights, with Germans worshipping him fervently. The German army obeyed his commands fully. His attention gradually turned toward the conquest of Austria and Czechoslovakia. In November 1936, Germany and Japan formalized the Anti-Comintern Pact in Berlin the following September. Italy joined, solidifying the formation of the Axis powers. On the 11th of March 1938, Hitler found support among Austria's pro-German faction with the help of Nazi elements, achieving a 99% support rate. By annexing Austria, Hitler took his first aggressive step in Central Europe. The UK and France allowed Hitler's moves to go unopposed. Following the annexation of Austria, Hitler plotted against Czechoslovakia. Hitler capitalized on the UK and France's aversion to war. On the 30th of September, Hitler inked the infamous Munich Pact with the UK, France, and Italy. Without a fight, Hitler seized the Sudetenland, stripping Czechoslovakia of its defenses. Soon after, huge military costs left the German government in the red. To plug the fiscal gap, on the night of the 9th of November 1938, Hitler commanded the SS and SA to ransack wealthy Jewish neighborhoods. During the event, shattered glass matched Belgium's half-year production. Shards of glass covered the ground, glistening under the moon, meaning the night of broken glass. Afterward, they seized roughly 12 billion marks in Jewish wealth. Nazi Germany began systematically deporting and killing Jews. Records show that between 1939 and 1945, spanning 6 years, the Nazis murdered over 50 million people of diverse ethnicities across Europe. 6 million were Jews, victims of unimaginable atrocities. March 1939, Hitler ignored the Munich Agreement using military pressure. Supporting internal separatists, Hitler occupied all of Czechoslovakia without resistance. After seizing Czechoslovakia, Hitler next set his sights on the Polish Danzig corridor. He aimed to reclaim Danzig would be just as effortless as seizing Austria and Czechoslovakia. However, the Poles quickly let him down. Breaking the Munich Agreement taught Britain and France a lesson. Even Neville Chamberlain gave up on appeasement and opted to back Poland. With the backing of Britain and France, the Poles firmly chose war. Consequently, a month later, Germany started devising the White Plan for invading Poland. A new world war became apparent. Poland was undoubtedly marked for annihilation. Hitler avoided direct military conflict with Europe. By this time, Britain and France had lost trust in him, so Hitler reached out to the Soviet Union. On the 23rd of August 1939, the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany signed the Non-Aggression Pact. On the 1st of September 1939, the White Plan was officially initiated, rupturing the Dawn's Call. World War II began. The German army launched fierce attacks along the Polish border. To conquer Poland, Hitler formed the Northern and Southern Army groups. The Southern Army Group comprised the 8th, 10th, and 14th Armies. The Northern Army Group consisted of the 3rd and 4th Armies. The harrowing lessons of World War I made Hitler detest trench warfare. He preferred quick, decisive battles. When he viewed Guderian's motorized units in 1933, he enthusiastically proclaimed, "This is exactly what I require." He assigned Guderian to organize and train armored forces, advancing mechanization. He poured substantial resources into tanks, submarines, and dive bombers. This metamorphosed into a military revolution, positioning the German army ahead of its time. They surpassed other nations' armies, recognized earlier that future wars wouldn't involve slow trench battles for territory. They used fast tanks and planes to break enemy lines. Open plains in western Poland provided the perfect stage for Germany's mechanized forces to display their power, protected by the Luftwaffe and focusing armor at a single point. With overwhelming firepower, they easily pierced Poland's defenses. Advanced behind enemy lines. Before the Poles reacted, many assembly points and command centers were key communication and rail hubs destroyed, stranding Polish troops in chaos, isolated and encircled. Germans succeeded remarkably. Within only 36 days, they triumphed and took 700,000 Polish prisoners. The Germans lost over 10,000 men. During the war, per the Soviet-German Pact, the USSR invaded eastern Poland. France, having given verbal assurances, reneged on its promise and stood by as Poland was conquered. France's weakness and Poland's downfall resulted in another surge in Hitler's popularity domestically. After blitzing Poland, Germany subsequently started planning Operation Yellow, aiming to deploy Army Group B as the primary, advancing through Belgium to draw Anglo-French forces into battle. However, Hitler found this unsatisfactory. He sought a surprising, fast, and efficient plan. Likewise, discontent with the Yellow Plan was then Chief of Staff of Army Group A, Erich von Manstein. He keenly observed, pointed out the flaw in the original plan, and introduced the revolutionary Sickle Plan, proposed utilizing Army Group A. The Southern Army Group led the assaults across the Ardennes, driving straight toward the English Channel, cutting through the Allies' rail lines. Meanwhile, Army Group B, attacking Holland and Belgium, drew Allied forces north, creating ideal conditions for Army Group A's decisive strike. Crossing the Ardennes was too risky for mechanized units. Manstein repeatedly removed from planning, until the original Yellow Plan was leaked. He presented his plan to Hitler, which was eventually put into action. May 10, 1940. Following the occupation of Denmark and Norway, Hitler addressed the generals, "Gentlemen, the German army's speech stunned the world. Holland fell in 5 days, and Belgium was teetering on the edge. Britain and France rushed reinforcements, but they didn't know. They faced Army Group B conducting the diversion. The genuine main force, Army Group A, was moving through the dense Ardennes forest in the south. When Guderian's 19th Panzer Corps and Rommel's 7th Panzer Division emerged from the forest, the French army was stunned by the sight of divine-like soldiers. Before they could organize any real defense, Sedan was quickly seized. The Germans crossed the Meuse River, forcing Britain and France to send air support. On the afternoon of May 14, above the Meuse River, both sides fought the fiercest aerial battle of the war so far, involving over 1,000 fighter planes. Confronted by heavy German fire, British and French planes arrived to support. They were quickly destroyed by the Germans, causing the Meuse defenses to fall. Nothing stood in the way of the German armored forces. They raced toward the English Channel with full force. On May 20th, Guderian's armored forces arrived at the English Channel. Approaching Dunkirk, Allied troops were about to be surrounded and annihilated by Army Group B in front and Army Group A behind. At this crucial juncture, Hitler abruptly ordered the advance to stop. He believed the British and French forces in Dunkirk were as good as trapped. Julen guaranteed him the Luftwaffe alone could wipe them out, and Hitler was keen to push southward. He did not wish the armored units to waste time in Dunkirk. 2 days later, he recognized it as a flawed decision. The Luftwaffe could not destroy the retreating Allies in Dunkirk. By the time he reissued the order to march on Dunkirk, it was already too late. The 48-hour delay enabled over 300,000 Allied troops to successfully withdraw. In the then demoralized Britain, the Dunkirk evacuation was hailed as a morale-boosting triumph. Britain could defend itself, but France could no longer put up a fight. On the 14th of June, the German army took Paris without resistance. In 35 days, it became a government in exile. Later, Hitler marched onto the conquered land and reviewed the troops beneath the Arc de Triomphe, posed for photos under the Eiffel Tower, and visited Napoleon's tomb at Les Invalides. After 8 days, the French government surrendered, splitting France in two. North occupied, South controlled by puppets. During the surrender ceremony, Hitler ordered a train carriage to be removed from the museum. 22 years earlier, it was in this very carriage that Germany surrendered to France. This moment was recorded, it was published worldwide in newspapers, and the Germans saw it as a profound disgrace. Hitler vowed to erase the past disgrace. He planned to receive France's surrender in this very carriage. When Hitler finally sat inside this carriage, unusually quiet, he met the French delegation without uttering a word. Later, he remembered, driven by revenge, his heart burned. After the ceremony, Hitler left the carriage feeling relieved and informed Goebbels over the phone. "I feel as if I've been reborn." Later, Hitler traveled back to Berlin by train. Flowers adorned the streets to the Reich Chancellery. Thousands lined the roadsides shouting themselves hoarse in celebration. No one believed invading France was wrong. Hitler had become their hero. After returning from France, Hitler was prepared to call it quits and seek peace with Britain. As Italian Foreign Minister Ciano put it, Hitler is a gambler who has already struck it rich. He no longer wants to risk it, and just wants to leave. But when Hitler, as the victor, sent what he termed a rational appeal to Britain, Churchill took just a few hours to reject the peace offer. Hitler was shocked and disappointed. Ordered Operation Seeley, targeting Britain's Air Force. In August 1940, Germany launched massive air attacks on Britain. The Luftwaffe targeted British airports with all its resources, radar stations and aircraft factories. Germans had numerical and technological advantages, placed immense pressure on Britain, destroying several airport runways. Fighters suffered losses. However, the RAF utilized its advanced radar warning system and tenacious repeatedly repelled German attacks. This stopped the Germans from invading Britain as anticipated. Hitler grew more anxious, seeing Churchill as his nemesis. Regardless of how often his bombers struck London, Churchill refused to yield, standing amidst the rubble and inspiring the British public. What frustrated Hitler further was Göring. Field Marshal promised to stop British bombers. If it occurred, he would change his name to Meyer upon reaching the Ruhr industrial area. Soon, Hermann Göring turned into Hermann Meyer. The RAF bombed the Ruhr, and in addition to that, Berlin as well. In the end, following several strategic mistakes, the Luftwaffe lost air dominance. On the 17th of September, Hitler was forced to suspend Operation Seeley, shifted focus to Eastern Front for Soviet invasion. The 18th of December 1940, Hitler signed Directive Number 21, formally naming the Soviet invasion Operation Barbarossa. On the morning of the 22nd of June 1941, the German army mobilized 5.5 million soldiers, a massive arsenal of 3,600 tanks, 7,000 artillery pieces, and Germany attacked the Soviet Union with 3 army groups. Hitler claimed the Soviet Union was a crumbling house. A single kick would bring it down with a thunderous crash. The early days of the war, his words proved true as German tanks quickly pierced Soviet defenses, penetrated deep into Soviet territory. The front advanced rapidly. Within 2 weeks, they captured vast swaths of land and reached Moscow's outskirts. millions of Soviet soldiers were encircled and destroyed. On the 30th of September 1941, Hitler declared the beginning of Operation Typhoon. The Central Army Group mobilized 1.8 million soldiers and 1,700 tanks for a major assault on Moscow. The 15th of October, some Soviet government officers left Moscow, but Stalin stayed behind. 3 weeks later, Stalin reviewed troops and called for mobilization. The people of Moscow joined in constructing city defenses. The Soviet Red Army fortified positions outside Moscow, constructed strong defensive lines despite German advances. They captured vast Soviet land and reached Moscow's outskirts. Faced with the threat of national extinction, their progress slowed. In early December, the harsh winter impacted the battle. Supply shortages reduced German combat effectiveness. Disease, hunger, and fuel shortages weakened Germany. Fuel shortages immobilized mechanized units. Despite these setbacks, Hitler shifted his focus to the other side of the ocean. After the US declared war, the Soviets counterattacked with 1 million troops. Germans retreated as Blitzkrieg failed. War turned into attrition. By June 1942, Germans abandoned full assault. Their efforts now centered on targeting the Caucasus and Stalingrad. Hitler aimed to take Stalingrad in order to disrupt Soviet supply routes along the Volga River. He aimed to control Caucasus oil to collapse USSR. He underestimated Soviet resolve. Appointed during the dire situation, General Chuikov led a nation ready to sacrifice everything. They battled the Germans street by street, house by house. Brutal urban warfare neutralized the Germans' mechanical superiority. Fighting continued until late October. By then, the battlefield had transformed into a living hell. With winter arriving early, the Germans found themselves increasingly trapped. November 1942. Soviets launched Uranus operation. Marshal Zhukov took command of the 3 Soviet fronts. They struck unexpectedly from the German flanks. Soviet tanks broke through German lines. The surrounded German Sixth Army, Field Marshal Paulus, captured over 90,000 Germans, surrendered. The devastating loss at Stalingrad. Hitler, undeterred by the setback, ordered new attacks. Renowned as the premier strategist, Field Marshal Manjadine crafted a precise fortress plan, aiming to attack from north and south, aiming to execute a pincer maneuver on the Kursk salient and recapture battlefield control. However, what Hitler didn't realize, by then, Allies cracked German codes. Soviets mobilized quickly after learning the plan. They constructed a formidable defensive line at Kursk, waiting for the German assault. On the morning of the 5th of July 1943, the Germans struck first. Suddenly, Kursk skies glowed red as German shells fell heavily, raining down on Soviet positions like hail. Subsequently, German armor advanced like a steel tide, stormed the Soviet defenses, staging the largest tank battle in human history. Soviets and Germans deployed almost 8,000 tanks and over 1.5 million troops. Tiger tanks, armed with heavy armor and firepower, they rampaged across the battlefield. T-34 tanks, with superior mobility and numbers, they fiercely resisted the German advance. After over a month of brutal combat, the Battle of Kursk ended in Soviet triumph. Germans suffered heavy losses. Many elite units were destroyed and much equipment heavily damaged. No longer capable of large-scale offensives, they shifted to strategic defense. The Soviets launched a full-scale counter-offensive early on the 6th of June, 1944. Allied forces led by the US and Britain assembled over 2 million troops. Covered by warships and aircraft, they crossed the Channel. Shattered defenses landed in Normandy, advanced into inland France, opening the Second European Front. On the 25th of July, the Allies broke out of Normandy. In August, Paris was December 1944. Hitler planned Ardennes counterattack. Focused troops broke defenses, pushed to Meuse River, reclaimed Antwerp's port, severed Allied supplies, and turned the tide on the Western Front. Chose top units assembled 250,000 soldiers armed with over 900 tanks, 800 aircraft, and 2,600 artillery guns. Initially, the Germans succeeded in breaking through Allied defenses as planned. However, they were quickly countered by the Allies and eventually collapsed due to lack of fuel. It marked Germany's final major counteroffensive. By mid-April 1945, the Soviets had mobilized around 2.5 million soldiers armed with over 6,000 tanks and 7,500 aircraft. They assaulted Berlin. By then, Germany's defenders totaled just 760,000, largely made up of elderly men, boys, and ill-equipped Volkssturm units. Within 2 weeks, Germany was defeated. The 30th of April, Hitler killed himself in bunker. Prior to his death, Hitler named Admiral Deutsch as his successor. Germany surrendered on May 8th, ending war in Europe.